a member of a couple of Facebook groups for bi and pan people. While scrolling through these groups, where topics like sexuality, gender, and word use are common topics, I've been noticing one word coming up a lot lately, and that word is comrade. It's sometimes suggested as a collective noun. If you're tired of your Midwestern friends saying, "Hey, you guys," you could say instead, "Hey, comrades." But as someone living in a former Soviet bloc country who grew up in the United States at the end of the Cold War, I have some thoughts on this word. I'll begin with this clip from YouTuber Contrapoint's AMA stream back in February, where a woman from Estonia talks about her issues with Soviet imagery.
Hi, Natalie. I wanted to ask, how do you feel about using communist/USSR symbols? For some people from the former USSR countries, I'm from Estonia, particularly for those who remember those times, the symbols can be potential triggers. A friend of mine recently asked for a trigger warning in a leftist meme group for an image that contained the hammer and sickle, while sarcastically noting that she'd surely get mocked for being a centrist for asking. To be explained to that there are no gulags anymore can also sound kind of hollow and doesn't really lessen the impact. So I personally hate using USSR and communist symbols unless I'm doing tabby.
You know, I've had the exact same thoughts about the word comrade. I've seen it tossed around in left-book groups, pretty casually, and I feel a bit weird about it. I'm never going to use the word comrade. Here's why. A caveat. Before we start, I should say I am pretty socialist, and will be more than happy with some form of anarcho-communism/socialism taking over as economic model. Further, while I've used Soviet-style communist imagery on social media before, like this photo of me in a hat with a red star, I want to be very clear what I mean when I say communist in this video. When I say communist in this video, I mean specifically the centralized model of Soviet-style communism, which led to breadlines, a strict authoritarian government, and Ayn Rand writing extremely long books. Yes, I know that Karl Marx's original definition of communism did not include government control of the economy or authoritarian police. However, since the USSR used the term communism to describe itself for almost 70 years, I'm not sure how useful people just have the wrong idea what communism is as an argument. It's unfortunate that Marx's original ideas now have the connotation that they have. There are two definitions for the word communist, and one of them is incredibly negative. I also think that overusing USSR images, coupled with the fact that people misunderstand what the word communism means, is a problem. Mainly that it scares people away from exploring economic models that aren't capitalist, especially in the US. Also, if your aim is to make sure that people understand the distinction between Marxist communist theories and the Soviet model, I think using Soviet imagery just confuses things. And if our goal is to smash capitalism and have a more equitable and just society, I am willing to let go of the word communist and comrade in order to do that. And aside, I don't want to alienate any communists watching this. I hope I haven't lost you. Well, unless you're a tanky. So first, I think we need to further define our terms. We just went over what communism is, and if you're still watching, it's probably to tell me just how great capitalism is and own me in the comments. When I say socialism, I mean workers taking part in ownership of the institutions they work for via unions and trade organizations. If you look at the labor movements in U.S. history, I think a lot of protections for workers, such as 8-hour workdays and weekends, came about because of organized labor. While auto company founder Henry Ford did make 8-hour workdays standard in 1926, he did so after popular demand from factory workers. Social democracy and socialism are sometimes used interchangeably, but they don't mean the same thing either. Social democracy refers to the government's involvement in social programs. Think Canada with its single-payer healthcare system, or the often-cited example of Scandinavian countries. Both communism, socialism, and social democracy all have a similar goal of trying to make society more equal. Communism's theory to do this was by getting rid of the class system and private property, and social democracy tries to even the playing field via social programs. Of course, there's capitalism, where private business owns the means of production and people compete, and I'm sure if we all work really hard, we can all be Jeff Bezos someday. A reminder, capitalism in the US does have plenty of government oversight. Think of FDA requirements for food, for example. In addition, the US does have social programs like social democracy does. Think Social Security and Medicare, though not as large a scale as social democracy. Also, capitalism has killed people as well. The Soviet model gets a bad rap, but try reading Upton Sinclair's The Jungle sometime. You'll go vegetarian and socialist in a heartbeat. Okay, lesson over. However, I still feel weird about using the word comrade given its history. First, I really don't think Americans should be the ones suggesting this word. If a whole bunch of post-Black countries decided to embrace the term, sure. But growing up in the 80s, I have vague memories about how the USSR was this large, scary place. A place Ronald Reagan talked about in somber tones, with oppressed people and a terrible government. Russians were often the bad guys in movies. Heck, they still are. Part of what makes Alexei's character in Stranger Things interesting is the contrast with him and the other Russians. On a personal note, since living in Poland, I've been interested in Soviet-style communist history, going to the DDR Museum in Berlin, the Museum of Communism in Prague, and taking a tour of a communist-built city near Krakow, where I get driven around in a real Trabant. Trabants are tiny, dreadfully made cars produced in former East Germany. Despite being partly made of plastic, being both very loud and very slow, they're a small emblem of the past. Families would wait years to get their Trabant. While I found these experiences fascinating, I've also been hit with how awful the Soviet model was. Here I need to touch on the definition of words versus connotation. These images of empty stores, ration cards, dull colors, and drab clothing are the connotations some people have with the word communism. While Marx didn't write about these things, I think at this point it is very difficult to separate the connection people have with the actual definition. Also, I teach English in Poland. I do encourage my students to use they as a singular pronoun, mainly because I'm so sick of seeing the he or she clunker in essays. And besides, legit places like Webster's AP Style use they this way. I'm not going to suggest to anyone in Poland that they use the word comrade. Too much baggage. While I do enjoy the random take or spoof using communist imagery, like the page Fully Automated Gay Space Communism, or this anime with the words mistranslated on purpose, I'm also really hesitant. The inside jokes from the left book pages are sometimes public, and those jokes make a lot of the left look really naive. The thing is, I am very socialist. I don't believe that one's ability to make money or produce products should determine your access to healthcare, food, or housing. There's plenty of work in a society that isn't monetized, like raising children, for example. Which is why jokingly using hammer and sickle imagery upsets me. I think it's hurting any potential acceptance of socialist ideals into US politics. Comrade is just a word like communism, but those words have meaning, and they have connotations, none of them good. And it's giving conservatives in the US ammunition. I've had it with suggestions that Obamacare is anything like Soviet communism. I'm sick of people who ignore how socialist programs are, like Social Security, but complain that education or healthcare for all is an evil pathway back to Stalinism. I think that both American capitalism and the Soviet model, in practice, have similar issues. Both are bad for workers and bad for the environment, whether it's shock workers killing themselves to meet inflated production quotas, or Walmart employees relying on government assistance to get by. Neither system is sustainable or respectful of basic human dignity. Speaking of sustainability, given how bad climate change is getting and capitalists' direct role in causing that, I think it's time we have an economic system that's more responsive to the people it affects. Call the next economic model whatever you like, but it has to make living more important than making money. Thanks for watching. If you're curious about the Communist Museum pics, they're all ones that I took, and I have included a link to the different museums in the video description. If you like the video, share it. If you think I forgot something, let me know in the comments. My script advisor is Brianna Stallings.